Um, there's a saying that pretty much all of us grew up hearing, I think.
Oh, yeah, usually from like a parent or a teacher.
Exactly. Like when you were complaining about, I don't know, a boring dinner or a hand-me-down sweater, they'd just look at you and say, beggars can't be choosers.
Right. It is just the ultimate conversation ender.
Yeah,
I
totally.
mean, traditionally, it just operates as this blunt lesson in gratitude, or at least a stark reminder to just accept whatever circumstances life happens to hand you, without complaining.
Right. And it's always framed around money or like material things or basic survival. But today, if you're joining us, we are taking that old dusty phrase and just flipping it completely upside down.
They really are.
Because if you're the kind of person who is constantly learning and always looking for those brilliant, perspective-shifting aha moments, this deep dive is for you.
Absolutely.
We're looking at a profoundly challenging journal entry. Our source today is a Substack post from Dr. Nomosanto Nensel.
Yeah, from July 21, 2026.
All right, published in the Sacred Return Journal. And, I mean, the title alone really sets the stage for where we're going. It's called When Begging Becomes an Identity.
It's a heavy title. And the mission for our deep dive today is to explore a completely unexpected psychological definition of that word, begging.
Yeah,
We are not talking about, asking for spare change on a street corner.
not at all.
We're looking at the incredibly subtle, everyday ways that we shrink ourselves, like our personalities, our ambitions, our truths, just to be
So it's
accepted.
fit in, yeah.
Exactly. And more importantly, we are going to chart a path back to total, unedited wholeness.
I love that, unedited wholeness. So let's get right into the mechanism of this, because Dr. Nitzel realized that hearing beggars can't be choosers. Growing up wasn't actually teaching her about gratitude.
No, not at all.
It was quietly and, like, insidiously teaching her how to negotiate her own worth.
Right, conditioning her to just accept less.
Yeah. To accept less than she knew she deserved, to actively make herself smaller so that she would be deemed, acceptable by the world around her.
And because we are so deeply socialized to seek belonging, we develop these incredibly subtle strategies to hide the parts of ourselves that might be perceived as, well, too much.
Oh, absolutely.
So the begging doesn't look like pleading on your knees. It looks like that internal monologue you have before stepping into a boardroom.
Or going on a first date.
Yes. Or publishing a piece of creative work. It's that little voice that whispers, maybe I should make this simpler so people understand.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or, don't talk about that esoteric part of your life yet. Or lead with what people are willing to pay for, not what you're actually here to offer.
Okay, let's unpack this because that distinction is trendy for me.
How so?
Well, wait, isn't making things simpler just good communication? Like, if I'm explaining a complex topic and I decide to omit the super dense jargon so my audience doesn't tune out, that doesn't feel like begging to me.
Right. I see what you mean.
I mean, I think about it like an incredibly talented musician choosing to only play generic three-chord pop songs because that's what gets radio play.
Yeah, exactly.
They're effectively begging the audience to listen by hiding their real genius.
Mm.
So why is she calling the simplifying part begging?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the distinction entirely comes down to your internal state
Uh,
and your intent rather than the external action of simplifying.
okay. Intent.
Yeah. Good communication, or knowing your audience, is about building a bridge so someone can actually walk over and reach your truth.
Okay.
What we're talking about today is tearing down your own house so you can fit into someone else's idea of what a building should look like.
Tearing down your own house to fit their mold. Wow.
Yeah, it's brutal.
That is a brutal image, but it makes perfect sense.
Because it's abandoning yourself. It is not about making a concept accessible. It is about hiding the vastness of who you are.
Right.
Because you're terrified that if people see the whole unedited picture, they're going to walk away.
So you aren't editing for clarity in that moment. You're editing for approval.
Exactly. You are withholding your true offerings because you've decided preemptively that the world won't value them.
Right.
And that action asks this heartbreaking, silent question to the people around you, which is, will you please choose me if I become smaller?
Will you please choose me if I become smaller? That really is the hidden beggar.
It is.
And because we are so terrified of not being chosen, we deploy these strategies constantly. But what is the actual consequence of this?
Well, it's not just that we hide.
Right.
It's that we fundamentally break ourselves apart. We start treating our own lives like a buffet, where we only put out the dishes we think other people want to eat.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it. And Dr. Nitzel actually lived this out in her own professional life,
Right.
right, with her platform, Mthanjeni.
She did.
It serves as a perfect case study for this whole dynamic.
It really does, because it illustrates how easily this happens even to people who are acutely self-aware. I mean, for a long time, her understanding of her own platform was highly segmented.
How so?
Well, at first, she thought her work was strictly about healing period pains.
Okay, physical healing.
Right. Then she shifted and thought it was about navigating relationships.
Okay, totally different.
Yeah. Later, she focused on dreams, then emotional healing, and finally, life purpose. And each of these phases felt entirely true and authentic to her at the time.
But the realization she came to is that these aren't separate things.
Exactly.
They're just different facets of the exact same gem. Like, Mthanjeni was never about one single isolated symptom.
No.
It was always about helping women remember that nothing in their lives is separate. The physical body, the dreams you have at night, the work you do during the day.
Your spirituality, your grief, your joy.
Yeah, they aren't isolated compartments that you can treat individually.
They are all different expressions of one woman, one life, and one ongoing conversation. And the irony here is just incredibly potent. Here's a practitioner teaching a deeply holistic philosophy, guiding women to integrate all these fractured parts of themselves,
Right.
while she herself was presenting her own life's work in these carefully edited, bite-sized pieces, just because she thought that was the only way it would be digested.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like trying to understand a house by only ever looking through one tiny window at a time.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like you peer through the kitchen window and see a chair. You walk around to the bedroom window and see a lamp.
Yeah.
You think you understand the house.
Yeah.
But you never get to open the front door and realize you're looking at a whole beautifully decorated, interconnected living room. You just have these disconnected pieces.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this completely dismantles our conventional understanding of humility.
Wait, really? Humility?
Yeah, because society often trains us to believe that humility means making ourselves less.
Oh, I see.
Like taking up less space, being quieter, downplaying our achievements, or just the sheer complexity of our thoughts.
Yeah, we totally mistake shrinking for being humble.
Exactly. But true humility is simply telling the exact truth about who we are.
Not more, not less.
Right. You don't artificially inflate your ego, but you absolutely do not shrink your reality either. You just stand in the truth.
Because when we fragment ourselves to be digestible, that cost doesn't stay neatly contained to our professional lives or, our resumes.
No, it bleeds into everything.
It really does. It shows up in our intimate relationships, our friendships, and even in our physical bodies.
Yeah.
It manifests as that persistent, quiet ache. That feeling that no matter how much you accomplish or how many people you are surrounded by, you are still not being fully seen.
And the diagnosis for that loneliness is striking.
Yeah.
Because we often blame the world for not seeing us. But the reality might be that the world cannot validate what it hasn't been shown.
Oh, wow. That's a gut punch.
If you only put a fraction of yourself out into the world can only interact with that fraction.
Right.
The rest of you stays starved for connection. And that starvation drives the feeling of needing to beg for approval, which just perpetuates the whole cycle of hiding. We are ultimately lonely for our own wholeness.
So if shrinking ourselves to be chosen is the trap, and this painful fragmentation is the consequence, how do we actually break the cycle?
That's the big question.
Right, you realize you're fragmented, you decide you want to step into wholeness. What happens next? Well, Dr. Nitzel maps this transition using a concept that completely shifts how we view the friction of personal growth.
She does.
She frames it around the astrological milestone of the first quarter moon.
Yeah, and in many astrological and spiritual traditions, the first quarter moon is traditionally described as a time of action, building and forward momentum.
Right.
But the psychological mechanism behind it is what's truly compelling here. It represents the exact moment where your intention meets resistance.
Intention meets resistance. That is the universal friction point.
It really is.
Because the moment you decide to stop shrinking, the ecosystem around you, which has grown very, very comfortable with you being small, is going to push back.
Precisely. The people in your life, your workplace, and even your own deeply ingrained neurological habits, they've relied on you playing a specific, limited role.
Right, you've trained them to expect the small version of you.
Exactly. So when you change the rules of engagement and demand wholeness, it creates a crucible.
Yeah.
And in that moment of intense resistance, you are faced with a pivotal question. She asks, will I continue becoming who I have always been, even when it feels uncomfortable?
And she drops a concept about momentum here that I think fundamentally changes how we think about pushing through that resistance. She says action without clarity creates exhaustion, but action from inner coherence creates momentum.
That is the turning point of her entire philosophy, and it requires us to really examine where our energy is going.
So what does this all mean in practice? Because I want to push back on this idea of inner coherence for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
It sounds dangerously close to just being stubborn.
Okay, how do you mean?
Like, if I decide I'm going to stop shrinking and act with inner coherence, does that just mean I become entirely uncompromising? Just adopting this attitude of this is who I am, deal with it, even if it completely alienates my peers.
That is a really crucial distinction because misunderstanding inner coherence can just lead to a different type of performance.
Right.
Being loud, aggressive, or stubborn for the sake of it, digging your heels in and yelling, deal with it, is usually a defensive posture.
Oh, okay.
And if you are being defensive, you are still reacting to the fear of not being accepted.
You're still letting the external world dictate your internal state.
Exactly. Inner coherence, on the other hand, is about quiet certainty.
Quiet certainty, it's not a reaction, it's a baseline.
Right. It's the difference between forcing an outcome and aligning with your true self. Forcing an outcome, trying to compel people to understand you or accept you, is what leads to that exhaustion we just talked about.
Oh, that's exhausting.
But when you are acting from inner coherence, you aren't fighting the world. You have simply refused to fight yourself anymore. That alignment is what generates natural, sustainable momentum.
That makes total sense. You aren't puffing your chest out, you're just standing up straight.
Yes, beautifully put.
And applying this to Anthony, she makes a really powerful declaration. She decides she no longer wants her life's work to ask for permission to exist.
Right.
She doesn't want to convince or compete or even become louder. She chooses wholeness over approval, truth over strategy, and integrity over performance.
And it's important to note that this isn't presented as some final destination of perfect enlightenment either.
Well, for sure.
It is an ongoing practice. It is
Yeah.
simply the daily choice to stop asking permission to become who you already are.
It is so grounding to hear that from an expert, you know, because it removes the pressure to be perfectly integrated overnight.
Absolutely.
Now, if you are listening to this right now and wondering how to actually practice this quiet certainty in your own life, she provides a few very pointed reflection questions to start with.
Yeah, to audit your own life for this kind of subtle begging, you have to ask yourself some deeply uncomfortable questions.
Get the journal out for this one.
Seriously. First, look at your humility. Where have you mistaken shrinking for being humble?
That's huge.
Second, where have you edited yourself before anyone even asked you to?
Oof. Yeah.
And third, where are you still, secretly, asking to be chosen?
Those are heavy, but they cut right to the core of the issue. And to help navigate those questions, try completing these two sentences. The first one is, if I stopped trying to be acceptable, I would finally admit that.
And the second is, the truest expression of who I am is.
But there is a very specific piece of advice on how to approach these, right?
Yes. Do not rush to intellectualize the answers. Notice what feels alive in your body first before you rush to answer.
Which ties right back into the holistic approach. The body and the mind aren't separate.
Not at all.
Think about it. When you consider a certain relationship or a specific project at work, does your chest tighten? Does your jaw clench?
Yeah, pay attention to that.
Your physical body is often the first thing to signal where you've been editing yourself to fit someone else's mold.
That physical tension is the literal manifestation of that fragmentation. And to anchor this entire philosophy of moving from tension back to wholeness, we have to look at what might be the most beautiful and clarifying analogy of this entire deep dive.
I love this part.
It perfectly encapsulates what it means to stop begging and start existing in inner coherence. Think of a natural spring of water.
The spring analogy is fascinating because it completely shifts the burden of responsibility.
It really does.
We spend so much time trying to be the perfect beverage for every single person we meet. But a natural spring doesn't argue about whether its water is valuable.
Yeah.
It doesn't put up billboards. It doesn't add artificial flavoring to appeal to a wider demographic. And it certainly doesn't beg people to take a sip. It just flows.
It just flows. And the people who are thirsty will naturally recognize it and drink.
Yeah.
And the people who are not thirsty, they will simply continue walking by.
That completely changes the paradigm. You are no longer responsible for making people thirsty. You just have to be water.
Exactly.
And crucially, neither response, someone drinking deeply or someone walking away without a glance, changes the fundamental nature or the value of the spring. It remains exactly what it is.
This raises an incredibly important question about resource allocation in our own lives, I think.
Yeah, how much energy we waste.
Right. How much of your daily energy is wasted trying to convince unthirsty people of your value?
Ugh, too much.
How much of your exhaustion comes from trying to force people to drink, rather than simply flowing and trusting that the people who need exactly what you naturally produce will find you?
It takes an immense amount of pressure off. The exhaustion of being a water salesman in a desert to people who only want soda is exactly what burns us out.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And you can see how embracing this philosophy of the spring flows directly into the actual integrated work that Dr. Netzel now offers as a sacred relationship healer.
Oh, absolutely. When you stop fragmenting your work, the connections between all these different disciplines become obvious.
Right.
If the idea of moving from fragmentation to wholeness stirs something in you, this is exactly the terrain she explores. For instance, her masterclass, Healing Period Pains Naturally, isn't just a medical seminar.
Right, it goes way deeper.
Yeah, it was the physical doorway that first led her inward to explore these deeper emotional currents.
It's fascinating that the physical body, a literal period pain, is the entry point to a massive spiritual unraveling. It proves that the body is keeping the score.
It really does.
She also guides a 12-week journey called Redefine Womanhood, which dives into the spiritual essence of a woman. And if you look at her broader platform, she deals with womb healing, emotional patterning, and even deep dream analysis.
Like her recent post on dreaming of snakes.
Yes, she analyzed what it means to dream of snakes chasing you.
And through the lens of inner coherence, we can now see that the snake dream, the physical pain, the relationship patterns, they are not isolated problems to be fixed.
No.
They are all the same conversation. Attempting to treat them as separate issues is just another form of fragmentation. They're all expressions of the whole self asking to be seen.
Man, we have covered some truly profound ground today. Let's just briefly trace the arc of the journey we just took.
Let's do it.
We started by dismantling that childhood cliche, realizing that constantly shrinking ourselves, editing our truths, and simplifying our complexity isn't humility or audience awareness.
No, it's not.
It is a disguised, exhausting form of begging for approval.
And we then examine the severe cost of that shrinking. It doesn't protect us from rejection. It results in the painful fragmentation of our lives.
Right.
It leaves us with that lonely ache of never being truly, comprehensively seen because we are only offering the world bite-sized pieces of who we are.
Then we looked at the inevitable friction that occurs when you decide to change. That first quarter moon phase where your new intention meets the old resistance of your environment.
The crucible.
Yeah, the crucible. And we explored how to push through that, not with aggressive stubbornness, but with the quiet certainty of inner coherence.
Ultimately culminating in the profound shift from seeking external validation to simply existing in your truth, refusing to market yourself to the unthirsty, and instead choosing to just flow like a natural spring.
And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. But before you step back into your day, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked about how a spring just flows, And thirsty people eventually find it. But think about your own life right now. Think about the relationships, the career path, the specific persona you have meticulously built over the years.
The ecosystem you've created while you were still editing yourself.
Exactly. If you finally take this advice to heart, if you stop editing yourself, stop shrinking your complexities, and simply begin to flow with inner coherence, how might the people around you change?
Wow.
Is it possible that you might lose the audience you gathered through begging, only to finally discover the audience that was desperately thirsty for the real you all along?
A very powerful question to sit with as you evaluate your own inner coherence.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep flowing, and we will catch you next time.